Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel, Hey Vaughn. Today we're going to be talking about travel. Like, what is going on with travel? What is the problem with travel today? And like, how can we move better in this world, you know? I have my great, lovely, gorgeous friend Marasa here. Woo. And honestly, we're just going to chop it up and talk. We have a lot of conversations about traveling and the crazy things that we see when we're traveling. And just the fact that like sometimes people act a fool in other countries and we really shouldn't be doing that. So we're going to be talking about that, talking about how we can travel more mindfully and how we can just be better global citizens. So Marasa, first up, I want to ask you, what do you think is the problem with travel today?
I think the modern travel culture can be a little exploitative, especially in like developing countries.
Facts.
So, you know, a lot of these communities, indigenous populations in these Latin American or Caribbean countries are not directly profiting from any of the tourism that's happening. And you'll hear that a lot of times, well, at least, you know, the tourism's helping the economy, whatever, but I mean, it's not true most of the time. And you can see it yourself. As soon as you know, go to a destination like that, you step outside the resort and it's a complete 180, like different world, right? So you have like luxury residential buildings and then 2 feet away is like the slums. And even when you're on the beach and, you know, you don't see the local population as much. I mean, in my case, like that was true for me when I went to Tulum.
When people think about resorts, they think that like locals own resorts or like locals aren't involved, but locals a lot of times they're the maids, they're the housekeepers. They may have like middle management positions, but they're not really the ones that are like owning anything when it comes to tourism. They're not the ones like really benefiting from tourism and all that it has to offer, right? Usually it's like foreign investors or like some investment group, right? Like there are a lot of times where, and you see this in a lot of black and brown countries where black and brown people are working in that country, but they don't get to enjoy any of the benefits of being in that country, which is kind of sad.
Exactly. So like they're there to enhance the experience for the visitors. They're there to cater to them, but they're not, you know, like exactly enjoying their own land and their natural resources. So.
Right. I think about, is it Labadie Beach in Haiti? It's supposed to be like one of the best beaches in Haiti, and it's owned by Carnival. So like you can't even go there if you're Haitian because it's privately owned. Like how does that happen, right? Like you can't even go on the beach in your own country. Jamaica too, right? Like a lot of Jamaicans, a lot of Jamaican beaches are not owned by Jamaican folks. They're owned by God knows whoever's out there.
Right.
And you can't even go on your own beach in your own country.
Same for Tulum.
Yeah.
They have like restricted access to the beach. I mean, I was in like a local little village, and I even asked someone where like the downtown area was, which was maybe like 2 miles away, and she had no idea what I was talking about. Like, so.
How was Tulum though?
I mean, it's a beautiful place. Very remote, but yeah, a lot of people are moving in, a lot of expats. So it's giving like modern colonization. It's very weird to see. It's a little dystopian. Personally, I felt that way. It's kind of like people go in there and it's like they intentionally choose to like be blind. Like they don't see the poverty, you know? They don't see like so it's a little dystopian, but I mean, overall it's a beautiful place, the jungle, the ocean. I feel like when you go to places like that, like you have to really be mindful about giving back to like the small businesses there, because then you're kind of doing the people a service, the economy a service. You know, whereas like if you're giving your money to like these big organizations that are just there to profit from the tourism, and they're not giving back, like your money's not really going to the right places. So
are all local businesses created equally? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know,
like
I never thought of that.
I just thought about it right now too. Like sometimes
it's a conversation.
I'm just like, but yeah, like. I see it all the time when I go to Mexico City. Like, you have a lot of Americans that get mad that folks don't speak English. And I'm like, guys, literally, Spanish-speaking country.
Yeah. Like, do your due diligence and learn at least a little bit of conversational
Spanish. Say hola, right. Say something. But I just feel like I see it a lot in Mexico City because, like you said, it's becoming gentrified. It's given gentrification. It's given, oh my God, everything's so cheap here.
Yeah.
And like, I can like go to 5-star dinners every single day. But it's also just like at the cost of who?
Right.
And what, right?
Right.
And I think about that too. Like we, as Americans, we really don't move in the way that we're supposed to. Especially in, I hate to use the word like developing because I feel like all of those things have like their own very, what is that word I'm looking for? Very loaded meaning.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like low key, whenever I go somewhere and like somebody says I'm not American or they ask me where I'm from, I'm always like, yes.
I know.
I don't give up like American vibes. I'm like, thank you.
It's like the most embarrassing thing.
Right. Like if somebody calls me, somebody's like, are you American? I'm like, oh no, like what did I do wrong?
What about me is giving off American?
Right.
Please tell me so I can change it.
Right, am I being too loud? Like, am I walking like I own shit? Because like
sense of entitlement. Like, what is it?
Right, because like sometimes I walk around and people will literally say out loud, Mexico City, oh my God, this is so cheap. But I'm like, it's cheap for you because of U.S.-Mexico relations and because the U.S. is a bully. And it's not cheap for the people who actually live here because they're struggling to make a living. Like a lot of Mexico City, a lot of the neighborhoods that were formerly bohemian and artsy are now almost all occupied by like foreigners with rent prices that are like 10, 20 times more than like what the average Mexican makes for a living. So yeah, it's just yeah.
Very disheartening to see.
It is. It is. And it makes me think like I love to travel. I want to be a respectful traveler. But it's also is there such a thing as traveling and not causing any harm?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think it's kind of hard to do under like capitalism, right?
Word.
So, yeah, great question though.
Can't answer it, guys. But yeah, I don't know. But I also do think that the concept of travel and entitlement is like a new thing. I don't know if people felt this way 20, 25 years ago. Like, oh, the world is my oyster and I have to go everywhere and I have to experience everything. Yeah. I think a lot of it is also social media.
I was going to say, social media definitely has a part to play in that. You know, you see a lot of like Instagram people actually who make their living off of like content creation just off of traveling, right? Like, you go on someone's page, they have highlights of like different countries, so you're like more inclined to like want to travel, but it's like it's just kind of to add to a list. Like you just want to cross this off. Like I've done this, I've done that, I've been here, I've seen the Mona Lisa, I've seen the Louvre, like, you know, but it's like, do you attach any kind of meaning to these things, to these experiences when you're going to see it, or you're just crossing it off a list, you know?
Right.
So.
Right. Like, are you really learning anything? Are you absorbing the culture? Are you trying to pick up a few phrases of the local language so you can communicate to people? It may not be perfect, but you're trying. And like, you're right. I think people just do it for the clout, right? Yeah. But what are you actually learning? Like, can you tell me something that you learned about the country that you've been to other than like, oh, I went to go see this monument or this attraction that I saw on Instagram? Then what's the point of traveling if you're not going to learn something new and do something different?
And travel is such a privilege. It's not something that everyone around the world gets to do. People that get visas, like, you know, we're very fortunate to come from countries where we have a very valuable passport. We can just go wherever we want. Yeah. So it's like you want to make the most of that. And, you know.
That's a really good point because, in a lot of other countries, like, the visa process takes months. Sometimes years, depending on where you're going. You have to prove that you have the income to travel. You have to prove that you're coming back. Like, I remember I was looking into Seychelles. And Seychelles, I think, guys, don't quote me this, I have to look this up. But I think they require you to have a return ticket. Like, you have to have a return ticket before you enter the country. Because it's like, oh, no, bitch, we don't want you here. Please don't stay here permanently. But yeah, we have to think about that. Like, for a lot of people who were not born in the West, or are like have roots in the West, like it's hard. You can't just get up and travel everywhere like we do. Like I don't know if you heard about Brazil. Brazil requires U.S. folks to now like apply for visas,
Yeah.
and people were really upset. But I'm like, but we do that same thing to everyone else. Like,
yeah. Again, sense of entitlement. It's
right.
an American thing.
It really is an American thing. Because I'm like, well, Brazil is giving us the same energy that we give them,
Right.
and like everybody else in the world.
Yes.
So I want to go to Brazil. So Brazil, I will be applying for your visa because I want to be there. Yeah, we're gonna be in Brazil. But I think that's a really good point that you bring about people just crossing things off, because I feel like, and I think we talked about this, there's a difference between being well-traveled and being worldly.
Yes.
And a lot of people who are well-traveled are not worldly.
Exactly.
At all.
Yeah. I think people who are well-traveled go into it with like, you know, a curious mind, right? You want to embrace the culture. You want to learn more about the culture, the way that people are living, you know, because, you know, you're not in your little bubble anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I've met so many people. I was just telling someone, I think lately, over the last couple of years, I feel like some of the most well-traveled people that I've met have been some of the most ignorant when it comes to like expanding reality outside of their own. Mm-hmm. And I know so many people that said, oh, I've been to 30 countries, I've been to 40 countries, I've been to 80 countries. But yet you can't tell. Mm-hmm. Because the level of empathy isn't there. The level of understanding in terms of different does not always mean bad is not there. You can just tell that they're just doing it just because everybody else is doing it. But if you're going to hop on a plane hundreds or thousands of miles away and plop yourself in a different country, why aren't you learning something?
Right.
Why aren't you interacting with locals? Why aren't you expanding your worldview and saying, oh, this country does something different than the country that I'm from, and that's okay, mm-hmm. right? Because a lot of times Americans go like, oh my God, this is not the way it is in America. No, bitch, you're not in America.
Exactly, and that's the whole point.
Right, yeah. That is the whole point. So if we're trying to Americanize everywhere we go, you might as well just sit your ass home.
Right.
In America.
Mm-hmm.
Period. So it's funny because I was talking to someone and they've been to 181 countries. Almost, I think they told me I have 19 countries left, and this is mostly for work. But before they told me that they've been to that many countries, I could tell that they were like a world traveler. I could tell that they were worldly because they had been everywhere. They had experienced so many different cultures. Like the level of empathy they had, and the level of understanding, and like saying, "Oh, this is just how different people operate," mm-hmm. and I can get that. I may not always agree with it, but I can put myself in somebody else's shoes, was amazing. And I feel like that's what's missing nowadays when it comes to traveling. It's like, people just travel, but then they're still just as ignorant.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Like, they're just traveling to see the sights, you know?
Right.
And then post an Instagram picture.
Right.
And call it a day.
FL Thailand. Don't come for me in my accent, y'all. But what is?
Yeah. I mean, you know what? Some people just want to go to a beach in Jamaica and sip on a pina colada. Like, you do you.
Right. But you know what? I also don't want to make travel feel like, oh my God, I really gotta like, I don't know.
Take my encyclopedia
and like trek across the world like on some Dora the Explorer shit. Because travel can be enjoyable, right? Like, and in some ways it should be like, I've been to the Caribbean before. I love the beaches there. I like to sit in the turquoise waters and the white sands. Mm-hmm. But I also go there with a knowledge of like, this is the country's politics. I try to learn a little bit of the language. I try to talk to locals. I don't just go to all the touristy spots. I try to go to somewhere that may be populated by more locals. I'm not going to pretend like I'm a local. I'm not a local, right? Obviously, people can tell. Even if I blend in with my phenotype, people can still tell like, oh, like she may not be American, because I don't get that. But she's not from here, right? So the whole idea of like, oh, I'm going to be a local when I travel, I'm like, dead that shit. Because you're not going to be a local. You're not. And that's okay. Yeah. Like, you are a visitor in someone's land. Mm-hmm. But I also just feel like travel can be enjoyable, but you can also learn something. You can also get some cultural context. You know, like those two things are not separate from each other, you know?
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. And also, like, you have to acknowledge the fact that you're literally on someone else's land.
Right.
Like, you have to be respectful and very mindful and intentional about the way that you're traveling.
Yeah.
So.
That's true. Because remember those stories in Dubai? Remember that British couple that, I don't know, were they holding hands or kissing? They were doing something really inappropriate in public.
Mm-hmm.
And
they caught up to them.
Yeah.
The law caught up to them.
They went to jail.
Yeah.
I don't remember how long. And I'll link the article, guys, because I don't remember it. But it was a pretty big story a few years ago. And I remember reading it, and my first thought was like, why? Like, you know that when you go into certain countries in the Middle East, the culture's a little bit more conservative, but you go pretending like the rules don't apply for you, to you. Yeah. But they absolutely do.
Like, once again, you're not in the West. And,
right.
You know?
And respect people's customs instead of saying, oh my God, why do we have to follow that? Because you're not home.
Exactly.
You're in somebody else's house. It's like, would you cut up and act a fool in somebody else's house?
Right.
No.
Exactly.
So why do you do it in someone else's whole ass country?
Mm-hmm.
So, period, poo. How has more access to travel made traveling worse?
That's a great question. I want to hear your thoughts. Okay, so what do you mean more access? Like,
okay,
in
so
what way did people not have enough access before? Like,
so if you think about travel, especially pre-social media, right?
Yeah.
We don't remember a time when Google Flights did not exist. There was a time where you had to call a travel agent who had to go, what is that website that they, ITA? That's like a travel agent website. Like, you had to make a concerted effort to travel. You couldn't look up things on Google because Google did not exist. You had to go from word of mouth, travel guides, and say, okay, like, I want to go see the Eiffel Tower. Sure, like, travel, I feel like, before social media especially, and maybe pre-internet too, was a lot more intentional because you had to do a lot more work, right?
Mm-hmm. And research.
And you couldn't just like, oh, Google Flights, book it. No, a lot of times you may have to call like a travel agent or, you know, like you just had to do more. So I feel like, and you know, I could be wrong because we are of a certain age. Yeah. So now you just hop on Google Flights, see what they got going on. You pack your bags. I'm like, I'm catching flights, my feelings. And then like,
facts. I'm so tired of seeing that.
And it's all about the pictures, right?
Yeah.
But think about it back in the day where we had disposable cameras or Polaroids where you had to actually wait to get your pictures developed, right? You weren't sitting here trying to pose at like 82-degree angles and figure it out. You were just living your life and documenting it, right? So I do feel like having more access to things has made travel worse. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like people don't travel with intention. And people are traveling with entitlement. And because anybody can travel, people are doing it. And there's going to be a hot take, guys. I don't think everyone should travel.
Yeah, it's not for everyone.
I don't think it's for everyone. I also feel like we need to get rid of this idea that if you don't travel, you're not worldly or like you're not open-minded because that's culture. That's not the case. You can become cultured by reading books. You become cultured by doing lots of other things, right? I remember I had a high school teacher, one of the most cultured people in the world, and I don't think he ever stepped out the country. Mm-hmm. So I feel like people have this idea like, oh, I must travel, I must be out here to be cultured, which, yeah, travel is a great way to know about culture, but in this information age, if you want to know anything about anything, you certainly can. Like, libraries are still free, y'all. You can still go to the library and learn. But I feel like travel has become this status marker, right? Like, oh, if you don't travel, something's wrong with you.
It's a way to like elevate your social status.
Right. Exactly. But what if you don't want to travel? What if traveling is not your thing? And that's also like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Some people are like, I'm a homebody. I want to sit here and read books. Like, that's fine. Mm-hmm. Read, because most people are not reading anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe more people read.
Yeah. Maybe you should do that in travel.
Right. Maybe pick up a book at the library, start traveling, you know? But yeah, that's my very long-winded answer. I do feel like more access has made it worse because people are not intentional about it, because you don't have to be as intentional.
Exactly. And I think a large part of the reason people are not intentional about it is because we have so much, I guess, like access online to, like, you know, to see what these countries look like. You're always seeing the freaking Eiffel Tower posted. Like, I feel like I've been there a million times just because I've seen it so many times. Like, I'm not really missing out, you know? Like, the first time I had the chance to go to France, I didn't really want to go to Paris. I went to the south. I was like, you don't really see much of that online. I was like, I want to be on the French Riviera. You know, like, it's different, you know? I'm not trying to come off like a snob or like I'm different. I'm cool. Like, I missed out on the, you know, the touristy areas. But, you know, like, going back to your point back then, when you had to go through a travel agent, like, there was no TikTok for you to, like, go online and see, oh, what does this look like? Like, you had more of a curiosity about these places, right? Like, more of a curious mind. Like, what are these places about? What is this culture like, you know? Whereas now it's like constantly in your face. Like, you see the Caribbean, St. Lucia, like people having freaking breakfast in those
right.
like, you know, it's like, oh, I want to do that.
With the flower pool?
Yeah, it's like, oh, I want to go to the Maldives, like those little huts in the middle of the water. It's like, you know, it's like constantly in your face. So it's like, again, just another thing to cross off, like, for the gram. So.
Right. And I want to go back to what you said. You said curious. And I love that because I feel like back when travel was a little bit less accessible, people were a lot more curious because you had to be, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't be a TikTok warrior. You couldn't be an Instagram. You couldn't be like a fake Instagram baddie and like try to like, oh, I want to sit here and set up this shot to take this picture. Yeah. Like, you really had to be curious about the world because you had to read about the world and be like, oh my God, like, this is what they do in this country. I really want to explore that. And I feel like that is what is missing out of travel is curiosity.
Yeah.
People are just not curious about where they go, honestly, like outside of just, oh, I've been here. That's
like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Want a cookie?
Right. Like,
you hopped on a flight. It took you somewhere.
Right. People go to a lot of different countries, but then don't know how to speak a language outside of English.
Yeah, that's a problem.
How, Sway?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about like fluency, right? Or even being near fluent. I'm talking about simple phrases.
Enough to get by. Conversational.
Please. Thank you. Yeah. Can I use the bathroom? Where is this? Nice to meet you. Like, people don't even got that.
Again, sense of entitlement. They go there thinking that they would probably know English, right? And so, yeah, that's a problem as well.
Deadass. Like that's it.
It's a problem.
That's the title, y'all. Deadass. It's a problem. But no, like, it is a problem because we get so mad when we go to different countries and people don't speak English.
Yeah.
But we expect everyone who comes here to speak English.
Exactly.
And I'm like,
see, this is why people don't like Americans. Honestly. We're not really doing well for ourselves, guys.
We really can't.
This is why there's a stereotype against us.
Right.
In every country.
Right. Like, so true because if somebody came here and was like, oh, you don't speak Danish? what would be the first thing we'll say? Like, oh, well, you're not in Denmark, you're in America.
Right.
But then we go to Denmark and they're like, well, I think the Scandinavians, like a lot of people are multilingual.
They are actually.
Yeah, so like actually they do know English.
Yeah,
but like besides the point, I don't know, we just move with a sense of impunity that's just, it's really unbecoming and it's not.
Yeah.
It's not good.
It's very embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. Embarrassing. It is very embarrassing. Like, I just,
Yeah.
So, yeah, guys, don't be an embarrassment.
Please do better. This is the public announcement for American travelers. Do better.
Do better, please.
Deadass.
So I want to end this by talking about the future.
Okay.
Where do you see the future of traveling? And what do you think people can do to be better travelers in the future?
That's a good question.
You know,
Oh my God.
I'm out here all the,
Yeah.
heavy hitters and shit. You know, we're doing real journalism out here, guys.
I know. Honestly, I don't have high hopes. I know it's very pessimistic, but I feel like, I keep bringing it back to the Tulum experience. Any beautiful place that we find, it's like we destroy it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's true, yeah.
and it's all due to right, like profit and greed, and
Right.
it's destroying the local, like the natural environment in places, and ruining things for the local population. So I don't know. I don't really have high hopes.
Same.
And it's kind of like it's losing its. I'm like out of words right now.
I'm like out of air.
What's the word I'm
Are
looking
you
for?
like appeal?
Yeah, like the more you see these places on TikTok and Instagram, exactly, like it's losing its appeal. Like, at one point it was like something very special. Like, oh my God, when I was like in French class, I don't know, we're only talking about France and Toulouse today. But when I was taking French in high school, we our teacher was about to take it didn't work out, but we were about to go on a trip to France, and it was like so exciting because it's like, yeah, but now it's just, I feel like it's just lost its appeal, kind of.
I hear you on that. Yeah, because when you see something for so many times, it kind of does lose that little bit of specialness. And it's not to say those places aren't special. Of course they are. But I think there's something to being exposed over and over and over to the same images. And I remember reading an article. I don't remember what publication it was, but someone said we're not meant to know everything about the world. Like, we're not meant to know what the Maldives looks like exactly, like all these places. Like, a lot of it is just very much information overload for the brain and fostering FOMO. And it's just like, okay, the Maldives looks like this. I have to go to Seychelles, like France, Denmark. It's too much.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times people see this like perfect image of this place online, and then when they go there, it doesn't look exactly like how it looks because it's not heavily edited, or you know what I'm saying? And they're disappointed. And it's like, yeah.
Right. Like, did you come and think that you were going to hop into this very pristine, untouched?
Yeah, exactly.
You thought you were going to be a pioneer, discover something? No.
Columbus, that's
right. Like Columbusing the beach.
Guys, I know this land that you don't know about.
Even though people already live there.
Yeah, people live there.
They don't count because we're going to eradicate them all anyway. Oh Lord! But yeah, I do very much feel like a bit of magic when it comes to traveling is getting lost. Mm-hmm. That bit of what my friend says, instead of traveling with the big itineraries, you're following your feet, right?
Yeah.
People don't get lost. People don't lend themselves to curiosity.
Yeah.
People don't lend themselves to wonder.
Right.
And
exactly.
It's just oh, I did this. Let me flex on the gram. I've had so many friends put up things on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, you look like you had a great trip. And I was like, oh, actually, my trip was fine. It was all right. Or it wasn't that great. And I'm like, but your pictures look great because right, because we're all trying to put up this facade. So I don't know who are we putting up this facade for?
Who is this for?
Your mama, who are we trying to impress? Mm-hmm. But yeah, and speaking, we talked a little bit about travel influencers and how they put up this facade of everything's great. You can't even trust travel influencers anymore.
Right.
Because
they're just trying to get their coins.
Right, which is you know what? I'm trying to get my coins too, because, I started to see too. But yes, it's you don't... Who is out there, and if you guys know anyone, please put in the comments, but who's out there who's actually traveling with intention, who is really honest and transparent about this is what happened, not so great, this is what happened, really great. Because travel is complex in that way, right? Mm-hmm. I went to go live in Mexico City for a month, and it wasn't always a great time. I had quite a few, not so great times, But I don't know any influencer who's really honest about the way that they travel.
I know one person comes to mind,
Oh,
actually.
okay, do tell.
The OG influencer. Rest in peace, Anthony Bourdain.
Oh, you're right.
He was a good one.
He was. Damn.
Yeah. The world needs more people like him.
Right. And I think that's why so many people connected with Anthony Bourdain, because they knew that when Anthony Bourdain went to a country, he wasn't just going to go and like be a helicopter tourist and eat and do all the things. Be like, okay, guys, bye. See you next episode. Yeah. But he really went in there to talk to locals. I mean, I don't know who exactly was on his production team, but they did a really good job stellar job, guys, of just always trying to find like locals and like places that he can plug into. I think that's why so many people related to him, because I feel like Anthony Bourdain was aspirational, right? He was like the aspirational traveler.
Yeah.
If you wanted to travel, you wanted to be like Anthony Bourdain. Right? A lot of people related to Anthony Bourdain because he was aspirational. He was the traveler that you wanted to be.
Yeah.
He was the person that either you wanted to be or you wanted to travel with.
Yeah. And there was a lot of beauty in the way that he traveled, because no matter where he went, he was able to connect with, you know, whoever. And it was like through food. Like, it was so cool to see.
Right. And then he was always super respectful. Yeah. He never had an air of entitlement around him. Like, our parents had the privilege to come to this country for us to be born here, right? But we also know that, yes, we are privileged here, but we also have enough sense, because we come from different cultures, to know that not everyone else has that same privilege of being able to come to a different country and then have their offspring be born here. And I think that's what makes, I think that's the, what's the word I'm looking for? The line when it comes to travel. I think when you have bicultural experience, or when your parents are not American, and this is not everyone, because obviously there's an exception to every rule. I feel like you have to say that now for social media. But I do very much feel like when you come from a different culture, when you're raised in a different culture, you always have a double understanding that, yes, this is my reality, but a lot of people did not get to experience that because of circumstance, right? Like, a lot of times when things happen, a lot of times it's sheer luck, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, my parents came here, my mom came here because she married my dad. My dad came here because he was on a student visa. But what if he was denied a visa?
Exactly.
You know, like, a lot of these things, yes, they're within our control. A lot of these things are also due to luck.
So how would you answer the question, you know, how do you see the future of travel?
Honestly, the same as you, low-key kind of bleak. But, or maybe not, I don't know. Okay, so I think about Gen Z, right? And how they're very skeptical of things that we weren't skeptical of. I think about, and specifically, I'm thinking about social media. I'm thinking about, like, specifically Instagram, right? I was reading this article on The Verge of how, like, Google is dominating search, but because Google is, like, the main player in search is not as accurate as it used to be. Because I don't know if you ever noticed this, like, when you're searching for something online, it'll say, like, what is the best flower for the daytime or something? I don't know, it's a dumbass question. One will say a daffodil, another one will say a sunflower. And it's like, okay, but which one is which, right?
Yeah.
Google is having this issue right now where they're just pulling things from the internet, and, like, we don't even know if things are accurate. So I think about Gen Z and how they have a natural skepticism to things that we didn't have as millennials. And I feel like maybe that may translate into travel. Like, this is a natural skepticism of, is that what it really is? Like, was the sky really that blue? I don't know, you know? Questioning things. I think they question things a lot more than millennials. Yeah, I feel like our generation, sounds so old, our generation. Yeah. But I feel like we didn't question things as much as Gen Z did.
Just took things at face value.
We did. We were the hustle hard generation. We were the girl bosses. We were the ones that, like, worked 50, 60 hours a week to get a shitty ass promotion only to do more work and, like, marginally better pay, you know? Whereas Gen Z is like, oh no, the stars are not aligning today. I'm going to take the day off. You know what I mean?
I love that for them.
I really do. I love that for y'all, you know? We love to see it. But that's something that was unfathomable for us. Like, we would have never done that. But to answer your question, I do feel like maybe Gen Z, if they carry that skepticism over to travel, will question and interrogate a lot of things. Like, why we travel, what are we doing when we're traveling, how are we extracting from the land, and how can we make it a little bit better, right? Because travel, especially now, it is extractive. Like when you hop on a plane, you're using jet fuel that's polluting
Right.
the atmosphere. When you're going out and you're eating, you're buying things, you're producing waste, you're buying plastic. Like I think about, do you watch The Good Place?
Oh yeah, I've seen a few episodes.
So you remember that episode in The Good Place where who was the guy's character? Ted's character, I forget his name. He was talking to the judge, and he was saying how, like, back in the day, if you bought a rose, it was a good thing, but now if you buy a tomato, you incur like so many negative points because the tomato came from someone who like picked it under like harsh conditions, right? Yeah. And so I do feel like there's no way to get away from travel being like a little bit extractive, but I do feel like there's a way that we can mitigate our impact when we travel.
Yeah, in small ways.
In small ways. Like, Earth is ghetto, guys. Like, we're kind of low-key fucked up. But we can make it a little bit less fucked up. So, in terms of the future of travel, I do feel like Gen Z will probably be a little bit more interrogative when it comes to that. Other than that, bro, I think it's kind of bleak.
Yeah.
You just have so many people who are, like, traveling for clout. Just say they did something. But, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's companies in those countries that are taking advantage of the tourism and people who are traveling for clout, and it's all just so commercial, and like you said, it loses its magic, you know?
It does. Like, I think some of the best things about traveling is getting lost, right?
Yeah.
Like, when I go to Mexico City, sometimes on some days, I do nothing but walk around.
Yeah.
I just walk around different neighborhoods, look at different stores, look at different restaurants, say, well, okay, this is nice. Let me add this to, like, a place I want to go to later, or just like maybe not. Maybe sometimes I just see things, I just enjoy it in that particular moment and just call it a fucking day, you know? And I feel like, yeah, to me that's the magic of traveling. It's just I'm just going to walk with no direction.
Yeah. Or
I'm just going to sit in the park and just chill and people watch.
Yeah. I think my best memories in other countries are the times where I've literally like have gotten lost, or just had a very spontaneous day, and I'm not exactly following my itinerary to a T.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, or just like talking to locals, or just somebody seeing you and being like, I'm very tall, everyone. So people are often like, oh, you're very tall. And I'm like, yes, I am. And start a conversation from there. Yeah. So, yeah, it's just, those are the magic. Not necessarily like seeing all the wonders of the world, even though that can be very magical. But sometimes just like, I'm just chilling, existing on this earth with everyone else right now, and just breathing in and breathing out. And that's it. Yeah. All right, Momo.
All right, fun.
Any final thoughts for the people?
You know I like being put on the spot. I'm sorry. I mean, just, travel with a curious mind, travel intentionally, just, I don't know. I mean, but you do you. Like, again, if you want to just be a tourist, that's on you. Like, who am I to hate on it, you know?
And local, there's nothing wrong with being a tourist. Like, people are like, I want to be a local, but you're not.
You're not a local.
It's okay. Because someone were to come to this country like, I'm a local. I'm like, you're not.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think there is a time for like enjoyment, and I don't want to make it seem like, oh, you gotta struggle, and like, travel has to be like struggle love, struggle love. But I think there's a way to do both. There's a way to have really good experiences and be a little bit more mindful of the way you move. And a lot of times, honestly, guys, it just comes up to like just being nice to people, being respectful of their culture, learning about their culture, so you know
a little bit about the language,
right? So that you can talk to people, learning about cultural norms, so that you don't violate them.
You're right.
A lot of times, that's what it really comes down to. Just like being a good person who is thoughtful.
Yeah, just don't be obnoxious.
Honestly,
that's it.
Final thoughts. Don't be an asshole.
Exactly.
Well, all right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. And please drop your comments below. How do you feel about traveling? What do you think the state of traveling is? What are some of the things that you've seen that you're like, I don't know. Tell us any and everything, and yeah, really looking forward to your comments. So thank you everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye.